Hello, hello, hello. Hello? Oh. Oh. Shalom. Salutations. Just checking audio balances on this whole situation before we get too comfortable in this. I guess the music is just not playing like at all. That's cool. That's dope. We love that for me. We're trying. We do this little game, we do this little dance every single time, and you know, we expect it at this point. How does that sound? Because it is heavily picking up my fan for some reason. I think that's a little bit better. It's also quiet though. Let's try moving the mic up all the way, moving desktop audio up just a tish. So that way you don't have to max out your volume in order to even kind of hear me. I think this is probably the best we're gonna get from. It's not bad. It's chill. There's some vibes. We're doing it. There's some vibes indeed. Let's get into it. The 5-star book draft. 5-star book draft. Well, first and for diggity most, I don't know who I am. I'm so sorry that I am whatever's going on with me. Salutations, friends. My name is Brianna Sukiyama Bond, otherwise known as No Ordinary Scholar, and the 5-star book draft. What is that? What is that to start? The 5-star book draft is this little thing I was doing I started doing it last year. It is basically taking my 5-star predictions and, you know, taking my 5-star predictions and at the end of the year, seeing what I actually ended up rating those books. The quote-unquote rules of the 5-star book draft are pick at least 5 books, no rereads, and no books in a series that you've already started, mostly because I feel like a series is viewed and reviewed and like opinions of a series are formed in a completely different way than a standalone or a first book in a series, and so that's why I wouldn't want a series in there, though there's like the exception of if it's like more of a collection than a series. It's called a series, but it's a bunch of completely separate stories by a bunch of different authors. That I feel is an exception, but you know what I mean. So those are really the only rules. And then yeah, at the end of the year, I find an average of the books that I read, find an average of the scores and star ratings that I did for them, and see, do I know myself? Do I know my own reading taste? Do I know anything at all? And spoiler alert, if you saw my reading wrap-up video, you'd have a solid idea of how that all went. But let's start by checking out what books I wanted to read in 2022. And see, this is the thing, because again, we started with 5 books. And this absolute massive mass of books is what I ended up having on my anticipated 5-star predictions list. And I can go through them all, But I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't read most of these. So we had The Witchery, I think this is No Filter and Other Lies, Like Lore, You Truly Assumed, Library of the Unwritten, Olga Dies Dreaming, Here Comes the Sun, The Last Mapmaker, Slay, The Final Strife is this one right here, The Chosen the Beautiful, Ace of Spades, Legend Born, Bayou Magic, Sunbear Trials, Dread Nation, All's Well, Gin City, The Last Cuentista, Heroin Complex. Organized Dreams on here twice. That's fine. Wife of Gods. The Fairy Tale Detectives is it's on this page, but it wasn't one of the 5-star predictions because it was a reread. It was just on books I really wanted to read by the end of the year, which, spoiler alert, did not get to this by the end of the year. Spy Family. This was another one that wasn't an actual 5-star prediction or an actual book, but we just kind of threw this whole slide because only 2 of this whole slide were not actually a part of the 5-star predictions. But yeah, the 5th book in the Diana Flowers series, again, another one did not get to, but that was a book I really wanted to get to by the end of the year, and again, didn't do it. And Goliath. So this is like all but 2 of these. Technically 3 because Olga Dies Dreaming is on here twice, but all of these were books that I was like, oh my god, this is gonna be an absolute, this is gonna be a banger, this is gonna be a 5-star read, this is gonna be the greatest read of my fucking life. That was what we had thought. These were books that I was betting my average on. Okay, I was betting on these books. That's the draft. I drafted them because I had high hopes, I had high expectations. How did that go? Not well. And it's really weird because I did in the majority of my books that I had read for 2022, I did end up having a majority of 5-star reads. Just they weren't the ones that I would predicted. They weren't the ones that I was very excited for were not didn't do well. Like of the 25 books that I left rating on Goodreads for, so I don't think this includes DNFs, but 17 of the 25 were 5-star reads, and I had a pretty solid, again, I just did my top 10 reads of the year video. That's on our stream. That's also on the channel in the videos, in the lives. But that one, we had some great books. We had some books I really enjoyed, really thrived with, really loved. It just really wasn't a lot of these books. So let's talk about these books real quick, give you a rundown. These are the only ones that I actually got to of the year. Remember that whole fucking absolute disaster that we threw up on the board previously? Yeah, we only got to 8? We only got to 8 of those books because I'm a disaster. Some of them weren't on there because I read them prior to... No. I think Ace of Spades is the only one that wasn't on there. Legend Born. I gave that was the first 5-star prediction that I read in the year, and it was actually one where I had read like 2 to 5% of the way into the audio or into the ebook, and was like, this is gonna be a 5-star book. Let me throw it on there. Played myself. I've done a full review of this before. I've talked about it a lot in other places. My issue with this book is I hate the way they demonize a literal child for lashing out about the death of her mother, which happened 3 months ago. And like that tends to be a thing they keep coming back to, is making it seem like she's a shitty person when really she is a child behaving as a child would do when their parent died 3 months ago, especially if said child blames themselves for the death. And I think it's especially terrible that there's a actual therapist character that is perpetuating that, and so I just can't recommend this book at all. The Chosen the Beautiful. Very high expectations. I was bored. It really felt like, because The Chosen the Beautiful is supposed to be a remix of The Great Gatsby, and honestly, for the most part, it honestly just felt like I was rereading the book again, but then with a few additional scenes and a few like changes, and even though the perspective was different, it felt almost still like the same story. And I'm not gonna lie, the supernatural aspect of it threw me, but it, like, I wasn't ready for it. And I went back and I read the description of the book to see if maybe I just wasn't reading it clearly enough and it was my own fault. I still really didn't pick up that there should have, like, even rereading the description, it didn't feel like there was going to be a good heads up that there was supernatural stuff. But even though it was there, it wasn't, like, interesting. I was just very bored with that book. So we ended up DNFing. Ace of Spades. My first one that I actually liked. Oh my god. I loved that book. I loved the storytelling. I was super invested. I hated those fucking white people. It was a great time. Absolutely enjoyed the storytelling. Absolutely enjoyed the plot and the story that was being told. And the little letter at the end before the actual epilogue had me in tears. Had me in literal tears. You truly assumed this book was another book that I didn't or put it on like my original 5-star prediction, like that first video, mostly because I didn't think I'd actually end up being able to get a copy of it. I'm fairly certain it wasn't, I'd only just kind of found the Libby app towards the end of 2021, beginning of this 2022. So I wasn't super confident in being able to access a lot of, and the amount of the, like, and the types of books I'd be able to access through Libby. So I mostly didn't put it on there because I didn't expect to be able to get it. When I read it, I did like the book. I thought it was really well done. I still gave it 4 stars. I think I still put it on like my favorite books of the year list. The only issue I had with the book is that I am not the audience for it, meaning that this book really feels like it's for someone who has not dealt with intense amounts of racism for many, many years. And because of that, there were parts of the book that I didn't realize until a lot later in the book, and like till the book almost started ending, that I just wasn't picking up that they were supposed to be rising action, that they were supposed to be increasing like tension and anxiety in the book, because it just felt like a normal Tuesday. Like it just felt like these were the norm type of things, so I just didn't think much of it. But I think this is a great book for younger kids of color who, you know, need like a gentle easing into the concept of racism and stuff like that. But I think it is a great book nonetheless. The Final Strife was a book. It was recommended by Bowties and Books. That's where I heard about the book. Absolutely obsessed with it. I think that the world building was fantastic. The characters, oh my god, the characters had their own little like 180. They had their own moments. They had their changes of hearts. Their whole, they went through it all. And I was not expecting to come out of it loving the characters as much as I did, if you know what I mean. Like, I really did very much appreciate and value the characters. I couldn't stand some of them at first, and mostly I just couldn't stand the idea of the main 2 characters, spoiler alert, but like, not really a spoiler. They end up in a romance, and it was something I figured was going to happen, but I hated the idea of it because they were just so, like, the main character, Shyla, was just so mean to, what is, oh my god, what is her name? This is going to kill me. I think it starts with an A. The Final Strife. Oh my god, I'm gonna hate myself when I realize. Honor. God damn it. Shyla was just so mean to Honor, and I was like, Grumpy Sunshine doesn't feel great if she's actually being just so mean. But like, bonding with the characters, being there as their relationship developed, you got me. And then you fucked me over, but whatever, it's fine. I'll live with it. But yeah, absolutely did love that story. 10 out of 10. Book 2 is pre-ordered. I also really want to reread the book to you know, do some lore digging, see if I can make some predictions or videos prior to the release of the book. Like, I'd love to do it, but let's not cross our fingers because, oh my god, I don't have time for anything. Next up is the Sunbearer Trials. I was genuinely like an Aiden Thomas stan account after I read Lost in the Neverwood, so I was super, super, super excited for this book. I don't have a problem with it per se. There's just a lot of making fun of a character for typically autistic coding traits, and it's just been super jarring for me. I also started reading this like at peak burnout, and so those two things mixed together has made it really, really hard for me to maintain momentum with this book. And as of 2022, I DNF'd it. I did not finish the book. I want to read it still because I do fully believe the author is going to like go forward handling it better, but I still I fully trust the author to deal with this well, but that doesn't mean it's less triggering as I go. It's less triggering to still see that stuff, even if it is intentional with like what the story is being told, even if it's intentional with the characters being told. That doesn't mean it make it less triggering for me at present. And so I intend to go back and read it, but for right now, we're like, I don't know when I'll pick it back up or how long it's gonna take me to read it whenever I pick it back up. So we're just leaving it as a DNF for right now. Dread Nation was not a DNF. It's the only one with the little slash through the stars that wasn't a DNF. It was actually just a 0 star. I have also done a full stream on this. It is just looking at changed in order to make this book tell the story it's trying to tell, if that makes sense. Like, a lot of it is hinged on the idea that indigenous people are a very minor aspect of Civil War era and that time period of the United States. It makes them a very, very minor character, and a very, very minor aspect, which is factually inaccurate, as well as their presence on the continent prior to all of this is also kind of erased. And there's a whole thing that makes just the book a lot less enjoyable for me to read and think back about. And so it's hard. I just don't enjoy the book as much now. And there are just a lot of choices I wish had been made differently that I think would have told a better story. Finally, Heroine Complex. It's come to my attention. It's come to my I've realized now that bad science rep is actually a major like, that's a major roadblock for me when it comes to a book, to anything really. First, it was the goddamn Mystery Incorporated live action YouTube video. I've done a video on that too, where they had Velma. They tried to claim that she was just a science person, but like the way they do it is just by making her close-minded. And here it was a science person that kept insisting that observations are not scientific. It just read like someone who didn't do well in science and was bitter about it was writing this scientific character, because none of the things the scientific character said were science. And I was willing to let it go. I just like the record to show I was willing to let it go, but the book wouldn't let it go. The book wouldn't stop having this dude be like, if seeing something isn't science, it's only science if you can put it in a beaker. I can't. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it anymore. So, when you put all that together and average it out, my actual rating for all of the 5-star predictions that I read last year was about a 2-star. So, yeah, I did great. I did fantastic in this. But moving on, we are going to look at the books that I want to read, my 5-star predictions for 2023. Some of these books are repeats from last year. Some of these books are completely new. Some of these books I doubt I'll get to because we'll talk more about that at the end. But some of these books I doubt I'll get to, and others I really want to prioritize. So the books that I have here are once again Spy Family. I really want to read it. As someone who's always loved spy stories, I really want to read this one. Spy Family. Good Morning Dinah, which is a story about an autistic girl who tries not to form relationships and form bonds with people because she doesn't want to get hurt, and then she forms a bond with someone and now she's getting hurt, and I just tears. Bones to the Wind by Tatiana Obe. Look at the cover. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Just found out this book is also queer. Absolutely. The Boy with the Bird in His Chest. This was another book I saw off of Bow Ties and Books. And I really want to read this one because the way they described it, the way they described it made it feel like something I'd really, really relate to. And they described it especially as something that would relate to being closeted and queer. But for me, I feel like I'd relate to it as someone that was autistic and didn't know it, but very much everyone else seemed to know that there was something different around me, and everyone else behaved as if there was something different about me, but I just wasn't. I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't bridge that gap. And so I feel like that's something that I would really, really appreciate, and that's one of the books I want to really prioritize reading. Gin City, I still just want to read it. It just still sounds really cool. The Blue Bar is a new book. I actually got this off of Amazon First Reads, which I'm still waiting for that email. I guess it's a little early to be waiting for that email for February. But it is a murder mystery with a lot of the way they were taught. I originally got it because the description sounded really great, but then I read a thread that the author put up on Blue Bars. I can't remember what country it was. It is India. Mumbai specifically, and it deals with aspects of that culture, and specifically I don't know if there's a great way to look up that thread by the author, but if you can find that thread by the author explaining the history of Blue Bars in Mumbai, I absolutely recommend it, and I want to reread that thread and then read that book at some point this year. The Phoenix King, I don't know if I'll get to this one, especially because I think it comes out later in the year, and Lord knows where I'm going to be mentally at that point. But I want to read The Phoenix King and I like this author puts out threads of Desi folklore. Is this also? Let's see. Let us see. Also Indian folklore, and the way that they tell those stories in the threads and tell this folklore and these myths in these threads makes me really, really, really excited to read their book. I just don't know if I'm going to because I'm a slow reader. But I do want to read it at some point. It sounds this author is just really, really good at telling a story, and so naturally I want to read a story they're telling. Healer of the Water Monster. That is another book that was recommended by Bowties and Books. I really want to read this book because, like, this is one of the books I'm prioritizing. And we'll talk more about why in a second. Wife of the Gods. I think this is the last Bowties and Books recommendation on here. It just sounds like a really, really interesting murder mystery. And it's also, I believe, set in Africa, which is super interesting. And I want to see what the story's gonna look like. They recommended it a lot, really highly. They highly recommended it. Those are the words that I'm looking for. And so I really want to check it out. Kaike. Everyone's been loving that book, so I would like to get to it. Gimmicks and Glamour is another autistic book. It is about a girl who's trying to hide the fact that she's autistic and can see these fairies that are running amok, but no one else can see them, and that sounds really, really cool. And El Príncipe del Sol, I really want to read more in Spanish. So there's not really a lesson with all of this. It's not like I sought out books to hate and then am saying like, oh my god, actually all books suck or anything like that. Like there's nothing really to learn from this. I thought I'd like some books and I didn't. And I don't think there's anything like a lesson to be learned in the fact that I didn't get to all of the books that I wanted to read because I'm a mood reader, I'm a slow reader, and I don't have a lot of time to read. So whatever I end up getting to, I'm happy to get to. And as my mood shifts over time, you'll see some of the books that didn't make it, that I didn't read last year, didn't make it onto this list. My mood shifts. The books that I hear about and know about shifts. So that's to be expected, and I'm not upset about it because, you know, that's the life we live. I do have a few goals in terms of reading, but I'm not sure if they all would, like, they don't necessarily align with the 5-star predictions. But I do want to read more indie books. I am upset about the lack of indie books on my reading last year. On this list, Good Morning Dinah and Bones to the Wind are the Gimmicks and Glamour also are the indie books I want to read, but I also have more indie books that I want to read. I just don't know, like, I wouldn't bet that they're going to be a 5-star prediction. I'm just not that sure about them. I would like to read more Spanish. That's where El Príncipe del Sol comes. I also have some other books that as well as some research papers in Spanish that I want to read over the course of the year. And I want to read more indigenous stories, especially stories with nature-based spirituality, because that is just a form of spirituality that I've been able to connect with a lot, and that's where Healer of the Water Monster comes in. It feels like that's going to have nature, like water's in it in the title, so I feel like that's going to have some nature-based spirituality. I just also don't know really how to look that up. I don't know how to, like, it's hard enough trying to find indigenous stories. I don't know how to like look up books with water-based spiritual, or not water, nature-based spirituality, and see if I can get like a good like recommendation from that. So if you happen to know any stories that fit that question, feel free to let me know. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have for you about my 5-star book draft. Keep checking in during my reading wrap-ups, and over every wrap-up I'll talk about the books that I have on my book draft that I got to, and telling you about, you know, where it goes, where it is, how we're doing, whatnot. Yeah, that is everything for me. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, Valedictions, friends.